You're listening to Small Business, Big Stories, the Queensland Small Business Commissioners podcast with Dominique Lamb. There are more than 482,000 small businesses in Queensland and counting. These are their stories. Today, I'm really excited about our guest. I'd love to welcome today our guest, Michael Grundon from Gawun. Tell us about your business, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Dominique. It's a pleasure to be here today. Exciting to be able to sit in a space like this and talk about the story of Gawun and what we do. We're an Indigenous workwear company, first and foremost. We provide workwear, custom corporate wear. We do custom high-vis shirts with Indigenous artwork and work with artists to produce products that we sell to tier one construction companies, mining companies, pretty much anyone that wears workwear or corporate wear. Gawun's a cubby word that means caring for. So I'm a proud cubby, Waka Waka and Koa man. My family's from Cherbourg, which is about 3 hours west of Brisbane. And that all ties into the work that we do here at Gawun and in particular the naming of our business, caring for community, caring for culture, and then also through workwear, caring for workers on site. And it doesn't matter which stage of your journey you're at. If you're on the journey, then we're willing to help. For First Nations businesses, there's support through Supply Nation, there's support through One Business, there's support through a lot of different avenues. One of the biggest things for me, and I was extremely lucky, I met an amazing team who wanted to do more and wanted to give back, and they really took me under their wing and kind of really helped me progress into what Gawun is now.
And how did that start? So where did you meet this team? Who are these people?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share this. So a mate of mine that I went to high school with was in the sort of mentoring space and that sort of thing, and he came across, so Kane Thompson and Tiffany are from Rely Supply, a workwear company. They've been going for about 15 years. Fantastic workwear company, fantastic group of people, right down to their team in the warehouse, the team in embroidery, everything like that. What Kane's built is incredible. We were introduced because I spoke to my mate from high school and said, I'm really keen to do something more. I worked in construction. I really felt like I needed to connect a bit more with my culture and community. So I was married, had kids. We had a really good life. And
you're still married, right?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we're still married. Coming up to, I think, 18 years or something. We've got adult children now, which is amazing. And I have an awesome family support unit. But I always felt like there was something missing. And it was an event that I went to at my daughter's school that kind of led me on this road to where I am now. She was on stage and it was an award ceremony. And I didn't attend a lot of those because I was always working and stuff, but I went to this particular one and she was on stage, and I said to my wife, why is our daughter on stage? And she said, it's, I'm not really sure. And I said, okay, well, let's
see what happens.
Let's see. And, as a parent, you're very nervous, right? You're nervous for your children who are up on stage and you're not sure what they're doing, and they haven't told you what they're doing. And she was then introduced to the stage by the principal to the front of the stage and was going to present the acknowledgement to country. And for me, as a parent, as a father, gone through construction, have kind of never always been on the cultural journey. It's always been there, but I've always been distracted by other things and whatnot. And when she delivered this acknowledgement to country, as I think she was about 11 or 12, just this young primary school girl, just standing on a stage in front of about 200 odd people and just saying, I'm young and I'm black and I'm proud of who I am, and in front of everyone. And I got very emotional. I'm really not an emotional person, and my wife sort of looked at me and she's like, what are you doing? And
what's
I said,
happening?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And it was because I was really proud. But the other part of it was the fact that it wasn't something that I'd taught her. And I think, you're a parent as well, and you want to teach your children everything, right? And it was something that I hadn't taught her. So for me, that was the point where I was like, I have to do better. I have to be a better role model. I have to be someone that's more connected with my own culture so that I can pass this on to our kids. And that was the catalyst for me. And so when I was talking to my mate and I said to him, I really want to do something, I'm not sure what it is. And then he said, there's a guy that's really keen to do some more work in this space. And I said, okay, I want to do it, but I want to connect with someone to do this and join with someone to do this, but I want it in a genuine way. I don't want to be tokenistic. I don't want to be, just doing things for the sake of doing things. We have to be committed. I mean, running a business is hard enough, regardless of who you are, where you're from, what type of business it is. Having a support network around you is critical to successfully continuing that business. First Nations space, there are a lot of very, very supportive people, but you can tend to get a lot of people that like to speak out against what you're doing, and if you're not confident or you're not committed to the path that you're taking, and you don't have that support network around you, it can crumble. And there were a couple of times where I felt like enough's enough, but it was family that I spoke to, and they said, do you believe in what you're doing? And I said, yes, I do. And they said, so do we. Keep going, and people will see that.
And so you started the business with Kane's help. You're doing lots of things. So you've got, obviously workwear, you're doing the tours, doing, cultural education, yarning circles, all those things which are incredibly important. Tell me a bit about that.
Look, I think that part of our nature, part of our culture is just wanting to help others. And I think that's in all of us, right? And I think all of us need to support each other, and all of us need to grow. And especially, I find it a lot in the First Nations space because it's always a lot harder. You have to give 120% because you're always constantly having to prove yourself. And then we had, a lot of companies that kind of spoke to us about wanting to do more and wanting to learn more in the Indigenous space, which I found fascinating and exciting at the same time, because we could then grow the business into what we do now, where we have toolbox yarns, we do tours out to Cherbourg community. One of the first companies we worked with had about 6 people, and they said that they wanted to learn more and wanted to do more. And I said to them, do you want to come out home to Cherbourg and go through the museum out there and we can talk about some things? And they said, yeah, that'd be great. So we teed that up and did that tour. And they said that was one of the most amazing things I've ever done.
And tell our listeners, just because we go sort of far and wide with this podcast, what is the history of Cherbourg?
Yep. So Cherbourg is a mission that was put there by the government. So they basically set up a little township, which wasn't really a township. It was more of, just a mission with tents and those sorts of things. And what they did was they brought people in from all over North Queensland, Northern New South Wales, some from Northern Territory, put them all in the one place, lots of different tribes, lots of different clan groups, different families, and basically brought them in. And the idea was to assimilate them from inside one mission to, they weren't allowed to speak their language. They weren't allowed to practice traditional dancing or hunting or anything. And they were basically trying to strip them of all of those sorts of things. And part of that was the stolen generation. They introduced diseases into the community. And it was basically to dwindle the numbers, I suppose. And what ended up happening was, over time, they started to come together and grow as a community. And it started to take a bit of ownership back after the government left.
So now you take, groups of people out there that have no context. What are the impacts that you've seen?
I've seen some massive impacts. And I think that's one of the exciting things about what we do. Our whole goal of focus, apart from working with communities and mob, is creating connections between corporations and country, and really bringing people who have never experienced this stuff into our world, show them what it's actually like, show them the history and those sorts of things, and then take that back to your workplace and take that back to your daily lives. It's all about education. It's all about helping people learn on their journey. Part of our nature, part of our culture is just wanting to help others. And I think that's in all of us, right? And I think all of us need to support each other, and all of us need to grow. And especially, I find it a lot in the First Nations space, because it's always a lot harder. You have to give 120% because you're always constantly having to prove yourself. Not only who you are or where you're from, but also what you do and whether you can supply that, and whether you can, you get a lot of big companies that say, oh, mate, you might not be able to supply us. And then you go, well, through the help of Kane and the 3PL company that we do, we can actually, we supply a lot of big businesses.
We can do
right?
big numbers.
We can
it's
do
no
big
problem.
numbers. That's fine. And so for me now, looking at some smaller First Nations businesses, and they're on that journey, and they weren't as lucky as I was. So I like to just speak with them and help them on their journey, help them with connections, help them, it's something. And what I said to them is, one of the big things is attend everything. The first 2 years of doing this, I knew no one in this industry, nobody. I just started going to, there's an event there, yep, go, bang. There's an event there, yep, go, bang.
Do you like networking? Do you like talking to people? Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. So how did you make yourself go to the events? Because, lots of people feel really uncomfortable. I myself, most people don't realise I am an introvert. So for me, going to an event can be very draining.
Draining and overwhelming.
Yes.
And when you rock up to a room where you know nobody, and it can be quite uncomfortable as well.
Yes.
And for me, it was about just going in and making a connection with one person and just having that small conversation. That's where it starts. In the First Nations Business Network in Brisbane, but also nationally, is growing massively. And there's so many new things that young people can aspire to be. And I think that that's great. And that's the sort of stuff that keeps you going when you're still working at 8 o'clock at night, or you're up at 4 a.m. in the morning to catch a flight somewhere to go to an event that you don't even know what you're going to. Yeah. You think about those sorts of things. I think about the kids and what we're leaving for them. If we can really be that guiding light between us as First Nations businesses for our young people, and then they can succeed on top of that and go through the ceiling on that, just like our elders did for us. We would never have been able to sit here in town if our elders didn't work as hard as they did to do the things that they did, so to allow us to sit there and sit here. And, I think that that's a huge thing that I always think about. And what is it we're leaving?
We ask everyone on this podcast, what is their mantra? Do you have a mantra or a saying, something that you that resonates with you in terms of, your purpose or why you do things or how you get through tough times?
Not really. You put me on the spot.
That's it. We put everyone on the spot.
I don't know off the top of my head if I have a specific quote that I kind of live by or anything. I just think family is important.
Yeah.
That support network, that family network allows you to be able to do so many things, and your family group and your friends group is what's probably the most important quote, a specific quote.
That's okay. That's good though. That works. I mean, I think it's something that gets left behind for many business owners. They sort of dive into their businesses and then everything else falls away. It's like another child, right?
It is.
And so it is a really important message about making sure that you stay connected with, those things that matter.
I think you have to remember your purpose.
Absolutely.
You see a lot of businesses move away from what they originally wanted to start their business. And that's something that we do as well. I'm constantly going back to what our purpose was and why we started the business, and aligning ourselves with organizations that have the same values, I think is a really big thing as well. I
know that there are people that you won't work with,
yes,
based on, things that they do or things that they've done, even if it's to benefit of your business, like you truly aren't willing to be used as sort of a token or anything like that.
No, that's right.
And that's hard business decisions, right?
They are hard business decisions, and you do think about them, but the beauty of it is when you make the decision, you feel really comfortable. And I feel like that's our old people and our ancestors just saying, yes, you've made the right decision, because internally you just feel better. You can breathe again.
Yeah.
And it can be to the detriment of expanding your business or growing your business on a more scalable, but what I've tried to do is build the foundation of our business first and what we stand for, and things will grow off the top of that. Once you have a strong foundation, then you can go through the ceiling.
What's your top tips for anyone who is in small business?
Connecting. For me, connecting, the accounts and the emails and all that stuff, you can take care of that stuff anytime, but you only have certain times during the day and certain events to be able to connect with people. I think if you can have more face-to-face meetings as opposed to the easy way out, phone calls or Teams meetings, I think face-to-face meetings are always much more important, and you get a bit of feel of each other as well.
It's interesting you say that. So we did the first behavioural study into small business owners in 20 years last year with Central Queensland University, and it shows that there are higher success rates for businesses that network, and particularly where they get their information. So we know that they will get most of their information from their trusted networks, as opposed to, say, government, which is like number 8 on the list. So we always encourage small businesses, get out there, talk to as many people as you can, because that's where we see them bloom.
And it's also the only way you can get your business out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Sitting behind a computer desk and doing Teams calls doesn't really get your business name out there. And it was actually quite humbling for me a couple of years ago, where we were going really well and we were attending events and we were in our circle. And then I took a step, half step outside of our circle, and people were like, "What do you do, mate? What do you?" And I was like, "Oh, wow!" And that expanded my mind then to go, you know what? We actually need to grow a little bit. We need to get out of our safe space, take a leap, and let's catch a plane to Sydney or Melbourne or Perth or wherever, and start again, and build a connection or group of people that you can rely on in those areas as well.
Do you have any advice for, say, business owners or big corporates, whoever might be listening? Like, how do you go about finding First Nations businesses and then doing business with them? I mean, I know that sounds really generic, and it should be just the same as you would do it with any other business. But, where does that question land with you?
No, that is actually a really good question, because we see that a lot. So when we work with our tier one companies and government and those sorts of things, they say, oh, we didn't know about these businesses, or we hadn't heard about these. And I say to them, any business you can think of, there's a First Nations business that does it. Anything, whether it's posters, signage, labour hire, traffic control, anything you can think of, the best way to connect is to talk to other First Nations businesses. You have your supply nations and you have your different, government run or led things, but the best way to do it is talk to other First Nations business. We have our own thing. We call it the Murray Grapevine. We all talk to each other. We all know each other. And if you don't know that person, you're only 2 conversations away from knowing that person. You know what I mean? Yeah. So any time that we go in and we work and we advocate for other businesses. So part of our network, when we go in with a company, it's, we get in there, we sell uniforms and we say, what else do you need? And they go, oh, you know what? It'd be great if we could look at this. Great. I'll set up an email, an introduction and you guys can talk about that. And then you send an emails to your other, Indigenous business friends and saying, hey, this person here is really interested in this, or they want to know about this, or just send them an email and see what happens. So generating other work for First Nations businesses is also really exciting, because then they come back to you and go, hey, that connection you gave us, we're actually in there working now. And you're like, that's awesome. And that's a good way to do it. And I think for government and corporates and stuff, we're out there. You just got to...
You got to be hungry enough to look, right?
Turn up to events. A lot of times we'll go to events and they won't have the right people in the rooms. And it's a tick the box exercise. And we know that. We feel it when we're there. We talk to people about, who does your uniforms? These sorts of things. And they have no idea, mate. It's like, well, why are we here? I thought this was an industry event or a meet and greet or whatever it is. And you're not even the right person that we need to be talking to. So when you have events, make sure the right people are in the rooms, because that's the only way that genuine connection is going to happen. And then follow up. Don't always leave it to us to follow up, because like you guys, we're also really busy, right? So those are big ones for industry and corporates, is if you're actually really genuine about doing it, come to those events and show that. Don't just show up because it's a KPI. It's just a waste of everybody's time, ours and theirs. And one of the big things about what I talk about with around First Nations, supporting First Nations businesses, is the fact that, you hear about closing the gap, and I know that was around health and those sorts of things, but it works with business too, because we have only been able to have businesses or own things or get loans or any of that sort of stuff since we were the referendum in 1967. Prior to that, we were classed as flora and fauna. We weren't allowed any of those extra things. So that's only 55, nearly 60 years that we're actually been allowed to own a business or do any of this sort of stuff, as opposed to the 150 odd years that whitefellas have been able to do that sort of thing. So there's a big gap there. And so supporting us is helping us get to a point where we're also self-sufficient and we also have that generational wealth. A lot of us didn't get houses passed down to us from our parents or our grandparents, and we don't have a lot of those things. And now we're trying to play catch up and grow so that we can have that for our kids and our...
And I think just on that point, we know that 80% of finance in small business land generally is attached to home loans. So in the absence of home loans, capital investment in First Nations businesses is likely to be lower just based on that assessment alone.
And a lot of First Nations businesses are local, are social enterprises, and some don't have the certification to say they're social enterprises, but they all give back to communities. It's ingrained in us to be social enterprises. So, and then you've got your First Nations spend as well. So you're ticking a lot of boxes by And we actually can do the job. Well, that's a big thing. We can actually do the job that you're asking us to
And
do.
with big numbers.
Sometimes better than mainstream businesses. So, yeah, I would just say give us a chance and work with us and help us grow as well.
Well, every time I speak to you, I think I leave more inspired. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast today.
Stop it.
No, thank you so much. I mean, I learn so much more every time we have a conversation, but, your insight and just your passion around everything that you do is so infectious. And so thank you very much.
I also want to thank you because you do amazing work as well in the small business space, and it's great to catch up with you, and it's always a privilege to, by the way, guys, I'm going to meet with the Small Business Commissioner today. They're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. It's like, she's such a lovely person. So it's a credit to you and the work that you do as well, that so many people are helped with the work that you do.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Small Business Big Stories. I hope today's discussion finds the people who need it. And for more inspiration on how to transform your small business, keep tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favourite platform. And if you have a business question for myself or my guests, we'd love to hear from you. Just follow the link in our show notes and send us an email. I'm Dominique Lamb, the Queensland Small Business Commissioner. Until next time.